Welcome to the No Cams Podcast. I'm Sunny G.
I'm Akash.
And I'm Jason. And here on the No Cams Podcast, we talk about movies, television, and a variety of other awesome topics. But today, we're talking again about Westworld Season 2, Episode 10, the finale, The Passenger. So getting right into our just general reactions. I mean, I'm going to go first. I liked it, I suppose. I think it was like the perfect ending to this season because it just... There's a lot of questions. I guess it answered some questions. There were some like good moments, some bad moments. I don't know. Like this episode, I feel like just summed up how I feel about season 2 in general. And I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not stoked about season 3 and beyond. This might be where I leave Westworld. I think I'm getting on the train and getting out of Westworld after season 2 personally. But yeah, I want to hear what you guys thought.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I stand yet. I need to let it stew some more. I need the summer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But this episode was bad, good? I'm not sure. A lot of moments here, man. Cool moments and reveals, and I'm not even sure if the reveals just present more mysteries or if they're answering any questions we've, been asked earlier this season. I don't know if it paid anything off, if the characters had any growth. I don't know what it means. I want to talk this through. I need some help. So this is where I'm at with the show.
I'm kind of with you. I think I need time to reflect on it.
Yeah.
Because on one level, it almost feels like everyone is like just a step forward from where they were one season ago.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Like some people are off the island. Some people are injured and rescued and getting off the island, but growth-wise, it's hard to tell where anybody is and what's going to happen.
Did you feel they answered questions you had with more questions?
It did the most I think the show has done so far to answer the bigger, lingering questions that I've had for a while. And then the very last scene, if you guys saw the after credits.
Yeah, which is very Marvel-esque. I don't know why they pulled that one.
Right. But yeah, that I think turned me off because now I feel like nothing in the show really matters. It's just they're just going to keep twisting and retconning and
Right.
doing whatever they want to all the characters. So I was really entertained throughout. And the hour and a half went by pretty quickly. But yeah, I'll need more time to pass full judgment.
Yeah, I will say that it was entertaining for sure. Like you're right, and the hour and a half did go by pretty quick. Like I never really checked the time. I was kind of interested, and they did a really good job of just like at the end of right before they tell you something, they just leave the cliffhanger, and you're like, well, fuck, I gotta know. And then they're gonna change storylines, and you're just kind of like, I felt this whole episode, I was just on the edge of getting an answer just the whole time, which I guess is good for a season finale, especially. A sci-fi, I mean, this style of a show. I mean, I guess it's good. It kept me asking questions till the very end. Great. But yeah, it felt like at some point it got real matrixy and real deep into like the sci-fi and like a completely different fucking direction that just was like really hard to hang on, and
it's like
and I don't know if it's
mixed with the Matrix, and it's some sort of weird like 4-dimensional storytelling that it's like we don't know where we're at right now.
And it's like, are we supposed to like be on board with it? Are we supposed to be confused by what's happening, or are we supposed to be on board? Because if we're supposed to be on board, I'm lost. Like I'm J.J. Abrams lost.
Can we be both? Because I feel like I'm on board and I'm lost.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm so lost I don't know where is the right place to be. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's such a weird effect that the show has. Like as much as this last episode is so polarizing, like I don't know where I fit on that spectrum. I keep like going back and forth, unable to figure out where I stand.
And I guess we can, as we go through the show, let's point out the points that like we liked and we just didn't like. The points that like really stood out and points that didn't.
Yeah.
But really trying to tackle, we normally go scene by scene, but there was just so much and so much intertwined. What we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of talk about Maeve's storyline, and then we're gonna talk separately about Bernard and Dolores' storyline, because those are really the two main drivers. But Dolores and Bernard was really the the lion's share of this episode. So let's
and
like
I
quickly.
think also as we go through each storyline, then let's all kind of comment on whether we felt satisfied with how the storylines finished or was left at the end of this episode.
Yeah. So the last time we saw Maeve in the last episode, she was on that operating table, and Ford had given her a kiss goodbye, and the computer started twitching. So now we see her back on that table, and she's about to be decommissioned, and some psychotic technician is about to like saw into her and basically decommission her, keeping her pain tolerance on. And as he's about to destroy her, she has other hosts from the lab come and save her. Then we see Hector, Felix, Armistice, and the whole crew running to go save Maeve, and finds Lee alone in the hallways along the way. And as they go to rescue Maeve, we see running through the hallway a huge horde of bulls that just takes down all these Delos security team. We then see, I guess we can then see her later throughout the episode, because there's large gaps in her storyline in this episode. But then we see them just being continuously chased by Delos. I mean, throughout the episode, they're trying to run to the door, and they finally see a key and the hosts all walking towards the door, and they see that giant. What would you call it? It looked like a portal, like a digital portal that just opened up in the canyon.
It's like it looked like some sort of space-time. Yeah, like something opened by the Tesseract or something.
Yeah. So they start getting chased again in the woods by the Delos security team, and Lee actually stops and kind of sacrifices himself to give Maeve and Hector and the host time to get away and get to the door. Maeve and Hector are then there amongst all the hosts walking towards the door with the Ghost Nation, looking for her daughter, as we see Clementine approaching. And if we remember from the last episode, Clementine has been reprogrammed using Maeve's code to infect other hosts. So as we see Clementine approaching on a white horse, she's infecting all the hosts that she gets near. And just mayhem is just kind of continuing throughout the episode. At the door, all the hosts are attacking each other. Maeve actually finds her daughter, and a key grabs her daughter and takes her through the door. And Maeve kind of uses her witchcraft to stop all the infected hosts from attacking the other hosts that are getting into the door, the unaffected hosts getting through the door. And as she's trying to stop them, she gets shot by the security team and dies. And Aki actually gets shot just as he's running through the door as well, but he survives, and he makes it to the Valley Beyond, along with the rest of the Ghost Nation. So that was actually all of Maeve's scenes, all of her whole arc in this episode. Mm-hmm. So what did you guys? So yeah, to answer your question or ask the question, Akash, what did you think of Maeve's contributions in this episode, or the way her character ended?
The way her character ended seemed, pretty apropos. I don't know how else. She could have gotten a happy ending, but then, I'm just thinking that other host who thinks that she's the actual mom of her daughter would have been left kind of, without a purpose. Confused or something, but I don't know. I wasn't surprised or disappointed with her ending. The way that we see her body and the nod of Felix and the other tech, I think there's some foreshadowing that Maeve's not gone. I think she's either a fan favorite or she serves a bigger purpose and has more powers than I think the show might be ready to let go of just yet. But it's kind of nothing that happened surprised me with Maeve. I think it was very well done with her character arc and how she went out. It just made her seem like a Messiah-esque character rising from the dead, and saving her people to paradise or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, definitely Messiah-esque. Although I don't really understand why they had to kill her. I felt like there were plenty of people that had just as many opportunities around where she was to get to the door. Right. So I don't know, that felt a bit unnecessary, but but I even actually I think she's a fan favorite. I think that's mainly the main reason they'll bring her back, because the easy explanation in the story at least is that the relationship she has with Felix, or at least the one that Felix has with her, might just be enough for them to will her back into operation, right?
Unless one of those control units or little pearls that we see leaving the park at the end, unless one of those belongs to Maeve somehow.
Could be, yeah.
You know,
it's possible, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of between you two. I mean, I thought it was interesting. For some reason, I felt underwhelmed by all of it. I'm not really sure why. I don't know if I like the execution. I like the end result is Maeve died, saving her daughter, getting her to paradise, and she's left behind. And I like that. I think that's a really cool way to end a hero. It's easy to give her the happy ending, but it's cool that they take a different route, especially with this character. But I don't know, man. All that mayhem going on, like towards the door. I mean, if this is the thing the whole season was being built up to, and all we really saw was like a line of hosts just fighting each other, and that was kind of it, you know. And all these other opportunities for Maeve to use her witchcraft, and she doesn't. Like, I feel like Maeve could have stopped at least the horse that Clementine was riding on, right? I mean, she can control stuff. So it felt like, I don't know, you get all these powers, she's been using these powers, and then at the end it just felt underwhelming.
From like a storytelling perspective, it could have been executed better.
I think so.
The whole ending with
Maeve. It felt kind of lazy.
Yeah,
and it felt like again, most of this show is Dolores and Bernard, so it's like we need to give them the bulk of it. So it's like it kind of had to be a little underwhelming, or else it would kind of steal the main arc of the show that they're trying to get into. I think the Dolores and Bernard, that's the launching point for future seasons. They have to really focus on that, you know. So it just felt, I don't know. I love Maeve, you know, and we haven't seen a whole lot of her the last couple episodes, so I really wanted to spend really more time with her, to see even more heroic ending to her character.
Yeah, I think the show thought they tried to give that to us with the bull run, but I guess that didn't land for you as much. I mean, that was her most heroic, maybe second most heroic moment besides freezing the other host. But,
I thought it was cool, but and I liked the way they filmed it. I thought that was nice, but yeah, I don't think it had enough emotional punch, if that was what they were going for.
I have a quick question, kind of digressing, but what Sunny mentioned with the bull run, the type of violence in the show, is it? How do you think it's executed? I mean, does it have a unique look to it, or does it feel technically well done in your mind? Because I feel like it's very different from other shows and even movies. It's kind of goes to the
cleaner
factor, right?
Yeah,
and it seems more scientific and colder and precise.
Surgical.
Yeah, surgical.
Yeah, very clean. Yeah, I agree. And they do like that slow motion moment for some reason felt really on brand for Westworld. But we haven't really seen a whole lot of slow motion stuff. But it's the opening credits,
exactly.
The opening credits, and that kind of sets the tone. Yeah, I agree. There is a uniqueness, and it's also just juxtapose that with when they're out in the desert, when the Man in Black is shooting down people. That feels so gritty too, and also so unique. I think it's also just the setting. We know that this is a fake world. We know this is an artificial world. So even the violence feels artificial in its own way. Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, yeah, they do action really well, especially earlier in the season when they did the small action pieces. Those are amazing. They do the hand-to-hand stuff and the face-to-face combat really, really well.
Big battle stuff, not so much, right?
Yeah, not so much. So within even this Maeve storyline, there's some sub-characters. How did you feel about the ending with Lee? Did you feel that was on character? It felt very out of character for him to be so sacrificial like that. It always seemed like he covered his own ass no matter what.
Yeah, it also felt unnecessary. There's no reason why he couldn't have shot at them a couple of times and then gave himself up.
Or thrown his gun, because they're giving him an opportunity, right? Now,
it's not like once he throws his gun down, they're going to execute him or something. He's human, so as far as they're concerned, he is still infinitely more valuable than any host, right? So at the very least, they'd keep him alive and maybe he'd get some jail time or something. But so it seemed highly unnecessary. Although, I liked, I guess, the motivation behind it. It felt, all in all, as a nice ending for his character, because he definitely got more likable throughout this entire season. In fact, his arc might have been the best, my favorite, because at least it feels the most complete and most genuine.
Yeah, dude, that's what I was gonna say.
But
he was the most
genuine though. The very ending makes it the least genuine part.
Well, except for the ending, but everything it's genuine in the sense that I can get why he would do it. Like maybe he just like was so motivated that he didn't want to live. But I just know that like that is maybe the only element of it that's out of character, is that he would like be willing to die to let them go, as opposed to just, you know, talk it out or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I liked it, honestly. Yeah. I liked the scene, and I love that it was the Hector monologue we never got to hear. You know, we never got to hear it. So it's cool that he got to
is that
deliver
what it was?
Yeah, that was his monologue. We never heard. He made a big deal about it in season 1 about unveiling it. Hector got shot. Like we never heard it. And even the other version of Hector, you know, Musashi. It's like, you know, we didn't actually get to hear the speed. So we finally heard it, and he's the one that got to deliver it, you know, while he was saving Hector. I thought that was cool. I mean, I think they did a good job making him, like you said, more like sympathetic, but he was more empathetic towards the hosts, like more and more. And we saw that in like the little interactions with Maeve throughout the season. So I mean, I liked it. I agree though. It was, I don't know why he had to die. Like that was kind of dumb, but I thought that was really cool that he just stepped in and said like, you know, you go. Because I think he learned that like, you know, Maeve has like a higher capacity for humanity than like most humans do, you know? So I feel on point with the direction. You really
have to rely on his behavior for the, you know, 7 minutes of screen time he had last episode to justify what he really did. That he's changed to be a different type of person. The way he approached Maeve and actually felt sorry for her. So.
Yeah, he gave that heartfelt speech to her. And like you said, Sonny, dude, he's like the most complete character in the show. He's like has the best arc of the show. He's the most complete arc of the show. You know, he's the most different from episode 10 from episode 1, which is funny because I remember Sonny, you like did not like his voice. Like I remember you just like did not like this character.
First season, I really did not like him at all.
Yeah. So I guess we can move on to like the bulk of the show, which is the Dolores Bernard, and I guess a little bit of Man in Black Charlotte storyline in there. So it starts in our opening scene. So we see Dolores talking with Bernard, testing him again for his fidelity. And she realizes that these little imperfections in each copy of Bernard may actually be a good thing. Basically, he could be better than Arnold, and after all, Arnold didn't survive. And as soon as she makes this realization, they just continue on with their test. And then we immediately see Bernard driving the vehicle that he took off in the last episode through the desert. And it somehow just kind of looks like very emotional, very aimless as he's walking. And then we immediately see Dolores laying next to Teddy's dead body as she removes his control unit and the flattened bullet from his head. She rides off and stumbles into the Man in Black, who's still digging his finger in his arm, testing whether or not he's a host or a human. She puts the flattened bullet in her gun and confronts the Man in Black, and they both realize that they drove people away that they love. And Dolores says that she needs him to get to the Valley Beyond, and they join forces, and Dolores gives him the gun. So that was kind of our opening sequence. That's kind of the pace of this episode too. It's just boom, 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 cutscene. And,
not to mention, it was like 3 or 4 episodes that he got the shit shot out of him, and now somehow he's like, I don't get how he's still alive. Just
whatever's in those red containers seem to be like healing juice or something.
Yeah, he's got like plot mana that's just healing him throughout the episodes.
Well, one of those episodes was the whole Akichi test, so it's really, you know, so it's only been like 3 days that he's had bullets riddled all over his body. Yeah, this dude won't die, which is kind of cool about his character, I guess. Also a cop out a little bit. But what did you think of the opening sequence, though? I mean, just saying, like, what did you think of when Dolores was saying that maybe it's better that you're not actually like Arnold?
I thought that I'm going to be asking that for another year before I get any fucking answers. So that's pretty much the only thought that went through my mind.
Yeah, it was just kind of interesting. Also, I didn't realize until the rewatch that that she removed that bullet. That bullet was from Teddy's head.
Same here. I didn't notice it till you see her kind of taking the what is it called, chestnut or whatever
the pearl
control unit.
Yeah, out of Teddy, and you see the piece of the metal or whatever.
I'm surprised that in the revolver would cause such a reaction.
Oh yeah,
right. It's just a hammer hitting a piece of like flattened lead.
Yeah, wouldn't the bullet still go through? It would still create like an impact. I don't
I thought
know.
she put it in between, like the exit and where the
Yeah.
bullet sits, so it backfired.
Oh, maybe that's what she did. Yeah.
Instead of the
Good point.
initial. Yeah.
Hmm.
So the bullet launched, but then it bounced off the thing. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
That was gruesome. So gruesome.
Yeah.
Ugh.
How much
didn't
more
know-
are they going to do to that guy?
I know, seriously, dude. I also didn't know. Have we ever seen them like just pull out of control unit like that? I feel like these last couple episodes, they're pulling out these little pearls or whatever. Pretty damn
Teddy
easy.
shot himself in the head, so I'm thinking she just like dug her
finger in a hole
with a knife or something. I don't know. Yeah, probably. I don't know.
I don't know. Did you guys hear that Dolores also confirmed that she saw Emily's dead body?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you think that was a pretty intentional line right there, right? Because I think a lot of people, including Man in Black, were asking if she was a host or not, and we know that now there's a copy of every guest that ever entered the park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Y'all think she's a host?
I thought she was human, but the fact that they like explicitly pointed it out. Oh, we found her body.
Or does it matter though? I guess that's a bigger question. Does it matter if she's a host or human? So like for how they ended the season, it might matter next season.
Yeah, I think it's just a little snippet for next season.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Well, I mean, she still showed up, right? In the after credit scene.
Yeah, but
So
we
it's
don't
still
know what
unclear.
version. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Shit, I guess I didn't see the after credit scene. Oh my god. All right, well that's all right. You can tell me about it.
Yeah, we'll tell you about
Okay.
I watched it twice and I didn't. All right, that's all right. So then we see Bernard. He's sitting alone. What he sees a valley, and we see a key in the Ghost Nation just walking through the valley towards the valley beyond. We then see Delos and the Delos team approaching the host with the reprogrammed Clementine riding on her white horse. Dolores and the Man in Black are also riding alongside these hosts, and they are speaking about finding something that they both wanted to destroy. That they both found something in the park, and the Man in Black says it seems our interests are aligned until they're not. Yeah, they were very on the nose this episode too. I felt like. So as Bernard is about to enter the forge, because then we see Bernard in front of the forge. Gosh, sorry, this episode really bounces around. So then we see Bernard in front of the forge, and as he's about to enter, he's stopped by the Delos security team. And then they're quickly approached and killed by Dolores and the Man in Black. Dolores approaches Bernard and says that tells the Man in Black that this is the man that he's been looking for all these years, and it's Arnold. And Dolores admits to Bernard that she's the one who built him under the orders of Ford, and it was her that was testing him for fidelity. So right at that moment, the Man in Black realizes this is the end. This is the door, the way that the ultimate place he's trying to go, and he turns on Dolores and tries to shoot her, and she's just unaffected, like we saw in like episode 3 or whatever it was. And as he keeps shooting, the gun finally backfires from that bullet that she put in there earlier, and it takes off 3 of the Man in Black's fingers, and he falls over, and Dolores and Bernard then enter the forge. I mean, I don't know. There's not a whole lot to really.
Yeah, that's just plot.
A lot of this is just plot, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand why, if they both want to destroy, like, the forge, why he would turn on them right there, like in literally the scene after he says, "We're aligned until we're not."
Yeah.
I also don't understand why Akichita wants to go to the Valley Beyond. No, not why he wants to go. I get why he wants to go. I don't know why he'd want to stop Dolores, because if Dolores doesn't go, the portal doesn't open. So I don't know why he's trying to stop her from the ultimate goal that he wants to reach, right? Or does he not? I mean, he obviously doesn't know that. He just hopes to show up there, and Ford's machinations and plans are aligned so well to where it times it perfectly. I mean, that's only logical explanation, right?
That's a good point. I guess Bernard is the one that actually opens the door.
Yeah, Bernard opens it. Yeah,
but you still need the key, which was in Abernathy, which Akichita either knew or no.
and to some degree, Bernard was persuaded by Ford. Was he? He was. Man, I think we're getting a little further off, but he was under his own volition and control after Elsie's death. But before that point, he was pretty much dictated by by Ford.
Yeah, but even then, I think Ford later says something about like you imagine, like Bernard says to himself or says to Ford that like he imagined Ford.
Yeah. Right. So that was
right.
I assume that was after the death of Elsie, where he assumes he's hearing Ford, but that's a point where he develops his own voice in his head.
I think so. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm trying to get at is everything that happened before then, which is him opening up the gate and portal. That was all in accordance with Ford's master plan. So that's why Akecheta knew that he should still head to the valley beyond. I mean, even though Dolores he was trying to stop her from getting there because he knew he didn't know, but in Ford's plan, Bernard was to open it, not Dolores.
Right. And it's even possible that he knew to some degree that Dolores wasn't down for the Valley Beyond.
Okay.
Or something like that, right? Yeah, I mean, I think at multiple times she said like not all of us can make it, but I think to other people they would just assume like this bitch is crazy. She can't be trusted to go there or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely fucked with time a little bit on this one too.
What I realized is that this entire season's ploy was to take the most boring parts of two storylines, one that happens after the other, which is just the storyline of all the events happening, and then the storyline of people finding out what events happened. And they took all of the boring parts of both of those storylines and they put them into 8 episodes, and then they saved all the good shit and the climax of each storyline for the last 2 episodes, just so that they could tie it up in whatever way they needed. So like I feel like this will be studied in film school as a way of making your boring ass movie at the very least like intriguing until it either satisfies or pisses off the audience when you get to the end.
Wow.
But yeah, I figured it out and I'm not buying it anymore.
Oh man. All right. I'm just going to keep pushing through then because
let's do it.
There's only so then we see Charlotte and the Delos team picking up Bernard, and they get onto a boat, and Stubbs objects, and Charlotte orders him to take some men and go look for some of the other survived guests. You see them just walking and keep walking. They walk over dead hosts, and then they finally enter into the forge. Strand says that he's going to transmit the signal containing all the data once they're inside the forge. Dolores and Bernard. Then we see Dolores and Bernard in the forge.
Let's talk about this. The forge. There's a lot to dig into this section, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, I had questions too. Like even right in this, like I mean, we already kind of was asking these two, like timelines of this. Like right when you see these two, like just the timelines of all of this stuff going on. And and then on the rewatch, I really was watching Charlotte's looks at Strand. She gives a lot of interesting looks.
Yeah, me too.
Strand.
I noticed that. Yeah.
So then we see Charlotte, Strand, and Bernard enter into the control room in the forge, I guess we'll call it, and we see Dolores's dead body on the floor. They ask Bernard where Abernathy's control unit is, and he doesn't know, and they threaten him and kind of hit him and point a gun at his face. And then we see Dolores and Bernard back in the forge, and she says that the forge has an entry to another land, but it also has information to destroy the human world, and that's what she's looking for. And they go into the cradle. Is that where
I think it is the forge.
The forge.
That's the forge.
The forge, which is just a bigger Mondo cradle.
Okay.
It's like one level in, so it's like Westworld in a digital realm inside Westworld. If that makes any sense.
Like the cradle. I mean, it's exactly the same as the cradle. Yeah.
It's just a more beefed up. The cradle on steroids.
Yeah, and it seems to have an AI running the whole thing.
Yeah. Which was really interesting. So then once they enter into the forge, we get a widescreen shot of Bernard and Dolores in a room just like Jim Delos' room. They're then open a door and enter into Sweetwater, and they see just hosts walking around. They walk into the Mariposa and see Jim Delos. Bernard says that this is where they tested Jim and observed his behavior, all the iterations of Jim. And then Jim Delos we then just see a scene of him just covered in blood, shouting at all the townspeople. Dolores says that she's looking for, quote, the system itself. All of this felt very psychedelic, by the way. This was all like very dreamlike, very
Inception-y.
Yeah, very, very weird. So as they're leaving
the doors,
What's that?
It's just like doors leading to more doors, down a level.
Yeah. Reminding me of like the hallway scene in The Matrix when they open the doors, just a different place.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So as they're Dolores and Bernard are walking, suddenly turns into night, and they see this really nice house where a party is going on, and it's a memory of Jim Delos and a party that he had. As they go and they're observing the skyline across the water, we see Logan appear, and the Dolores kind of questions, like, how does he exist? He never came back to the park. So that's kind of what we learned. He never returned back to the park. And he says that he's just made up of his father's memories, which were imperfect of him. And he reveals that he himself is a system controlling the forge. So then he says that he was basically tasked with building copies of all the guests. And he successfully made a copy of Jim Delos, but it couldn't survive in the real world. So he said he needed to try to understand why humans make the decisions they make, and ultimately realize that humans don't make decisions at all. That then he takes them to the moment that, quote, defines Jim Delos' life, where we see Logan just strung out drinking on a pool chair. And Jim tells him just to get clean and rejoin the business. And Logan basically admits that he's kind of reached rock bottom, and apparently overdoses 6 months later. And that's where we see the Forge Logan says that all humans' they live their life according to their code. And he says that they overcomplicated their code. And once he simplified the code, it made an exact replica or a better replica of the host, right?
Okay.
You seem kind of skeptical there.
I'm not skeptical. I just feel like multiple different inputs or perspectives were given on the explanation of this. First, he says there's 18 million different personalities, and then he alludes to saying it all leads to one point no matter what. And then he's saying humans are so complicated yet they're so simple. So I'm confused as what his exact point is here. So is he saying that out of 18 million variations, they all end up at one point and it's hard to recreate that? Or is he saying that it's simpler when it's easier if you have the host not have any unique behaviors, just have them behave predictably? Is he saying that's the best way to put a consciousness in a host body, or what's he getting at there? I don't understand.
Well, I think he showed that scene with Jim basically to say that, I think he said that 14 million versions of Jim, and he 18. Put them 18. It was 18. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So he puts and all of them, he put them all through the same simulation, and they all ended up in the same spot, saying the same thing with their son Logan,
but with slightly different variations on the way to that moment, right?
That's the defining moment for Jim. Okay. So he's basically saying the core of who you are is not complicated. It's simple. And so them trying to replicate them, trying to add all these complications is fucking up their code. Just keep it simple. They'll make the same simple decisions. So yeah, in a way it is predictability. If you can build in the basics of someone's character, that's all you really need to pass them off for them to make the decisions that they would make in the real world. You don't need to add these extra layers of complexity. I think that's what he was saying.
No, so I think the qualifier is that it's not that they would make the same identical decisions. It's that whatever decisions a person makes is governed by their code. And so you program something to be that code and it'll make similar decisions, especially because they will eventually converge to those singular moments that define a person. That's just that moment exists in their code as a decision that they will always make. And that's the anchor. Yeah, that's the anchor of their code, and then the anchor of all the other decisions that they would make, which will vary here and there. But they're still based around that loose personality. And so I think the conclusion he was coming to is that because humans are just simple pieces of code, like we can still have a lot of complex variations in our behavior, and that's not a bad thing. Like when he was thinking that they needed to keep tweaking and adding complications in order to guide every single decision of every variation towards the same exact sequence of choices that was recorded. But I think he realized that that's not important because humans are just code, and their code will converge towards what their ultimate like decision defining moments are.
But then they conclude all that with saying that we really don't have a choice in our decisions. Doesn't Bernard state that explicitly?
Yeah, but that's what that, like, you being governed by code means you don't have free will, right? Like okay. you make choices, but they're still like like anchored to the code that you can't change, the thing that you can't understand about yourself. Yeah.
And since we're on this point, I want to jump to the post credits because I think that ties in directly with what we see in the post credits. Yeah. The whole dialogue with William at the post credits sums up to saying that he essentially wants to break that cycle and he can prove his choice, like, or the decision he made, right? And to me, my interpretation of that scene was that this is an AI version of William trying to break that, break the conclusion of not having a choice in your decisions, and that maybe that's one way to break into the reality that the humans exist in. This certain reality of Delos works within the Forge, but I think the cycle that William is trying to break out is how you move to the next plane.
Like, how do you keep your host body intact by like, and you're saying that the way that you do that might be to prove that you can make your own choices and be free from your code.
So in that specific example, it's William doesn't end up in that dirty old forge with his daughter again. So that's the cycle he's trying to break.
Interesting.
Within the post credits, I think.
Okay, Jason, sorry, we should catch you up. Okay, so when you see William go down into the elevator, so after he picks himself back up after getting his fingers blown off, he goes down the elevator, right? Yeah. And he's going presumably to the same area that Bernard and Dolores were at. When he gets down there, he sees Emily. And it's unclear whether this Emily is real or not, although she's like seems to act a little bit more robotic. Then she leads him to like the room that they had Delos locked up in. Yeah. Like a room that looks very similar to that, except it's all like dusty and looks like, it's been weathered. But inside she like sits him down and she says, a bunch of crap, but pretty much ends by saying like, this is about fidelity. And he says at some point in their conversation about like what Akash just said. I can't remember what it was exactly. Right.
He's trying to break or show that he has a choice in the decisions that he makes, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So either they're outright saying, and I'm just too dense, or they're implying that he might himself be a host. Or like
at least that version is a host.
Yeah, that version, or the one that the version that's been in the park since the beginning of season 1 or something like that.
Well, because we saw another version of him.
That's what I'm saying. So this could be another level. Because we did see Logan walk by looking at William and saying that this is the most unredeemable consciousness within the Forge, So he could be in his own loop. I mean, we've only seen like what the library is. We did see them walk through I'm sorry, what's the name of the western town? Sweetwater, right? So there is that whole universe within the Forge.
Right.
So he could always just be leading back there in that loop.
I see. Yeah, I mean, it also crossed my mind that this might be some like digital dream he's having, because we do see his body on the beach in the most present time. Right. So yeah, at some point
our reality. Because I think now they could be playing with the Forge reality, our reality, and then the outside world.
Yeah, and the dimension of time across all of that, right?
Sure, exactly.
Yeah, they're playing with a lot of fire.
That's just too much. Oh shit, I forgot what I was going to say. I was going to ask something. All right, but actually I did have another question. It's like, so to your point, Sonny, too, when I was talking about the introduction scene, the intro scene, and Dolores was saying that maybe variance is good. Maybe the change, little tweaks are good. And you kind of said you had thoughts on that. Is this kind of what you're referring to too? There's like this scene too. Are you tying it back to that scene as well with Logan kind of admitting that maybe little variances is okay as long as like the core code is the same? Did you see any parallels there
between that and which other scene?
And what Dolores said to Bernard when she was testing him and saying that you're not exactly like Arnold, but maybe that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what put me into that general idea. Yeah, and that, which is why they said it. I still don't know the bigger significance of that. Right? Maybe meaning that like that is some part of the secret to getting a consciousness to live in a host body, or maybe that's part of the secret to like creating better clones or like maybe better versions of a person. Mm-hmm. Right. So like if they die, you can create a clone that maybe is biased towards better qualities or something like that. It's hard to see what the future is of that general idea. But I did see the connection there.
Maybe it's like with simpler code, it will produce these little variances, but maybe ultimately that's like allows their body to handle it. You know, maybe it's just like, maybe it's an easier work payload for the host body.
So the issue I have though is that if there is a strong connection between the conclusion that this AI Logan came to and the ability for these host consciousnesses to live in real bodies, I feel like we would have I feel like it's hard to explain that, like how it can have the solution and yet no one has done anything with the solution yet, and that becomes a big plot device next season. You know what I mean?
For humans to be in a host, like human consciousness to be in a host.
Yeah, like if that's any way connected to this like simplicity or this like idea that humans are simple code or something like that, it doesn't make sense to me why there wouldn't be humans already living in this body. So my gut tells me that that's not the real connection, although it does seem like the most obvious.
It does explain like hosts though, like hosts in the park. Like this is Jim's cornerstone, this event. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like you know, they're giving all these people cornerstones, and maybe the Man in Black's cornerstone is his wife dying. But it's like you put in something simple, like a simple event, and everything's dictated by that. You know, we know that Teddy, everything he does is motivated by like being a good man, so he can be with Dolores and they can find a place together. You know, so maybe it's all tying into that idea, or maybe this is like the inception of that idea of just simple memory can create like a whole different layers of a personality or character.
Yeah, there's also the element that like since we haven't seen this AI talk with someone who knows about it already, right? Like it's responsible for all the exposition. Like that what AI Logan was telling us, it has been like a cornerstone of how Westworld develops narratives and develops hosts, right? And so it's a big reveal to us, but it's really just a part of the day in, day out of like how they make Westworld work, and it, like you said, like how they make the hosts work, right? Maybe that could be why all of the hosts have a cornerstone and like a prime directive or whatever, is because of conclusions that this AI came to that he's just sharing with Bernard and Dolores. But I hope there's something more to it than that.
Yeah, but again, it feels very Matrixy, and he's the architect and Matrix, Reloaded, and it's all this over again, and it's like telling Bernard he's kind of the one, you can open you decide what happens to the Forge, the future of the Matrix is in your hands, Neo. It's like the same shit, and it felt that way. But as we go on, because we see more of the Forge Logan, and he said that he's made copies of all the guests that have ever set foot in the park, and he says that that most are soft. And he says some are irredeemable, and we get a little glimpse of the Man in Black. And he says, but none are in control of their own actions.
And I guess why is there like pictures or like simulations of Maeve in there? Are there hosts in there too and guests?
That's probably how they test. Oh no, that's explicitly what they said, right? They ran when they were running Jim Delos through the simulations. They were running him through simulations of the park to try to get him to do exactly what his real self did, right? Which means they need to test against host consciousnesses or copies of them. So that's probably why, Maeve and some of the other ones are in there. Not to mention, you can probably beta test like updates to their consciousnesses in these things, right? Yeah.
So even with the destruction of the cradle, some version of these hosts, if they didn't delete it off of the Forge server, sits on sits on the server of the Forge.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that this is more like an offline server, like a backup one. So I'm sure like I think the ones that were in the cradle were like up to date versions.
Correct.
So that you could print a new Maeve out of there, and like, you know, despite the fact that you wouldn't want her to have all of her memories, they probably could be like retained there. But I think the ones in the Forge are just for users and for just for testing against. I think.
Logan also tells Bernard that he was instructed by Bernard to give Dolores everything that she needs in the Forge. And they walk into a library full of books on every guest. And he says that hosts are unlikely to survive in the real world. But with the knowledge found in the library, Dolores could. Okay, so I had throughout these scenes with these guys, Logan keeps referring to Bernard as like, he says you a lot, like, you know, you're a part of this, you. So is he talking to Arnold really, or is he talking to Bernard? Like, did Bernard instruct him to do all this, like Bernard, or was this Arnold before he died? Like, I don't know.
I see.
Yeah, you're thinking who's the actual architect behind all this?
Yeah, because I mean, I guess we're kind of left to assume that this is like when Bernard kind of woke up, and these are all the things that he did, along with like making a replica of Charlotte or whatever. But like, I don't know, this seems like a very premeditated thing, along with everything in Westworld. And yeah, is he kind of like mistaking or speaking to Bernard on behalf of Arnold, you know, or like speaking to Arnold through Bernard?
No, I think I think Ford set all this up. Because obviously Arnold wouldn't know about Bernard. So I think either some previous version of Bernard set this up, or Ford set it up, and it's like the key is for Bernard. Right. It's like unlockable by him.
Okay.
I think this is part of what Ford's journey for Bernard is, or Ford's story for Bernard. Yeah.
How did you guys feel about the idea of like the library, seeing like physical books on people with like pages that have like code etched into them?
I mean, it's a cool visualization.
Yeah,
they could have gone really anywhere with it, but it's a cool visualization.
Yeah, it just felt kind of weird just seeing her like reading books. You know, just seemed like I don't know. It was weird.
With the notes, with it being like those notes, like, you know, the piano player notes, that felt very like on brand. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, very intentional.
Yeah. So we're at the library, and Logan shows Bernard and Dolores the Valley Beyond, and Bernard somehow opens the door, and Logan says that the host minds will live on in the Forge. Just a really funny side note, as we're seeing like the door open, we're seeing like the host see the door, and Felix and the other tech like can't see the door.
Yeah,
which I thought it was actually kind of a cool little. I was hoping or half expecting Felix to be like, "Oh, it doesn't look like anything to me."
Yeah, that would actually be in full circle. Nice.
That he's just a host who's not allowed to see it.
Yeah. So now we see the hosts walking into the Valley Beyond. And Dolores says that it's just another false promise. And so she exits the Forge, and attempts to destroy it. Dolores says that there's no world that they can create that can compare with the real world, and that she longs for the real world.
So it seems the main conflict here is the decision between choice and what Dolores seems to favor more, which is choice in a different realm, right? They're both getting the same thing, but in different realms. One is in a more digital realm, and one is in a more physical, tangible. I guess if you were to think of it as numbers, Westworld would be 0, like -1 would be the Forge, and +1 would be the world outside the park, right? So that's the only way they diverge, but it's like weird to me that she can't see they both want the same thing. It's like they're talking past each other.
Yeah, that's been my main conflict with her, I think, is that she believes that -1 is bad, right? +1 is the only thing that can exist,
right?
Yet refuses to give people the choice to go with -1 if they want to,
right?
Yeah, and it seems like that'll be the main conflict between her and Bernard. Is at least Bernard is realizing or wants to assert that they can carve out their own space that's not in the human space, and Dolores just seems hellbent on saying that no, the humans are never going to let you have anything, so we have to kill them.
Right.
Yeah. Again, what they still haven't answered is like, really why all of these, like really why? I mean, I don't know. So then we see the Man in Black still alive, like patching himself up, and he enters into the forge. And Dolores and Bernard just start to argue and continue to argue about whether the Valley Beyond should be destroyed or not as the forge begins to flood. Bernard then just shoots Dolores in the head. And he leaves the forge as it's flooding. And the Delos team are sweeping through the field that was in front of the door, shooting all the remaining hosts that are still alive. And that valley that it's in begins to flood, and they all head back to Delos HQ. Oh, the door is closed also, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're back in the forge, and Bernard. I'm sorry. Before that, Elsie and Bernard are back together again, and she's skeptical again of Bernard, and says that she can save him from being decommissioned. She confronts Charlotte and voices her concern about what's going on in the park and threatens to leak all the information about the park. And Charlotte just gets angry and shoots down Elsie. So now we're back in the forge again with the Delos team and Bernard and Charlotte. And Bernard accuses Charlotte of killing Elsie. I think either accuses killing Elsie or Dolores. And Charlotte demands to know where the pearl is. She pulls it out of Dolores' control units, and they somehow get to access and start to transfer the data that they've been looking for in the forge. As I keep going, do you guys have any thoughts on any of this, or do you remember what you were thinking when you were watching any of this?
It's poor Elsie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even like Elsie, and I felt bad for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a bummer. She was kind of naive, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, go Sonny.
No, I'm glad Bernard shot Dolores. Because I think that's supposed to be a pivotal moment for his story. It's also very interesting that Dolores kills Arnold, creates Bernard. Arnold creates Dolores. Dolores kills Arnold. Dolores creates Bernard. Bernard kills Dolores. And
Then Dolores creates Bernard.
Everyone brings each other back.
Bernard in the real world.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm just glad, I guess, like he's like living up to what he's coming to realize is his responsibility as a person who can make choices, even despite what he thinks is being driven by Ford.
That was
an empowering moment for Bernard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really cool. But so what did you guys think when he was there and he accuses Charlotte? Like, we see the scene of Charlotte killing Elsie, and then he just looks at Charlotte and says, you killed her, or you killed something, right? I mean, is he talking about Elsie? Is he talking to Elsie or Dolores there?
No, Elsie.
Elsie?
Yeah, for sure.
Elsie.
It's
just, man, this whole episode was such a mind fuck. It's like watching it again. It's like, I gotta try to remember everything that I saw from the last episode.
It's just his memories keep coming back, right? Like he fucked up his brain on purpose, and he slowly, as he revisits the places that he knows he's been, he's just recollecting his memories, piece by piece.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess he kind of explains that later too, doesn't he?
Right.
Yeah. So then after that, we see Bernard just watching Elsie get shot, trying to get Ford back into his brain. But fails to find the data. And then Ford suddenly appears and basically motivates him to save himself and the other hosts, and he asks for Ford's help. We see Bernard removing Dolores' control unit and creating a new host of some kind. He tells Strand that he scrambled his memories so that they couldn't find out what he did. They realized that the data that they were being transmitted was not guest data, and they start panicking. And Bernard says that he killed, quote, all of you, and brought Dolores back, which we get revealed is the skin of Charlotte. He basically rebuilt the Charlotte and put Dolores' control unit in Charlotte, and we see Charlotte, the Dolores Charlotte. Shit, this is gonna be hard. We see the host Charlotte come and kill the real Charlotte.
Just call her Darlet or like something like that.
Darlet, I like Darlet. Darlet's pretty good. All right, so we see Darlet kill Charlotte, and then she kills all the security team, and says that she ultimately will not destroy the Valley Beyond, and she ends up sending them to a different location, and then kills Bernard. So I can you guys tell me what she did there with the Valley Beyond? She like redirected a satellite, and what happened?
We don't know. It's the data is supposedly sent somewhere more safe, and I assume it's sent to Arnold's house in the real world.
That's what I'm thinking. I think she sent the contents of the forge, which should now only be the host that made it through the wall through the door. Yeah, and she sent them to. Yeah, I agree. Arnold's probably personal server, so that they can just live out in peace.
And I think it's also important to note. I think she transfers Teddy's consciousness.
Yeah.
Into that world too, because she had his ball and used the upload device or whatever.
I believe that's exactly what happened as well. Yeah.
All right. So then after that, we see Bernard on the beach with Ford, and Bernard realizes that Ford was deleted from his system, but it was him that he imagined Ford when he needed his help and guidance, and that the voice that's kind of been guiding his actions was ultimately his own voice. He erases his memories and his data, so it can't be used against the host or to find the hosts, and just quietly lays down at the beach.
So is White the voice that Dolores hears until she realizes it's her own?
Yeah, I think like Wyatt was her own voice by the end of season 1.
That could be a parallel there, right? Is that Ford is Bernard's Wyatt.
So do you guys remember from season 1 the idea of the bicameral mind? This gets brought up very quietly throughout. I've been meaning to bring it up in the episodes too, but
please remind me.
It was the idea that like the primitive man, when they heard their own voice in their head, they assumed it was the voice of God, or the voice of a god, or some supernatural. And so the idea of the bicameral mind is like that voice is like ultimately your own consciousness speaking to you. So that was a driving force of season 1. And the finale was called The Bicameral Mind. And that's when Dolores figured out that this voice that's in her head was hers. And this character, Wyatt, was her. And I think that's a big key to host consciousness, is understanding that this voice that's a programmed voice that Dolores heard as Arnold, and Bernard is hearing or seeing as Ford is ultimately theirs. So I think like at that moment he realized like he's achieved consciousness. He's a conscious host. He's a conscious being at this point. And I think that was the main significance. And I love that idea. I love that they keep reusing the idea of the voice and a voice and hearing the voice, and the voice is their creator, and it slowly turns into like their own. I think it's a really cool idea.
It's a bummer though. Like at the highest point of his evolution, he has to lay on the beach and scramble his mind for like 2 weeks. It's got to take 2 steps forward, now take a step back.
So when is so that was another thing too. So when he lies on the beach, so when do we see him on the beach again? Like what episodes?
So episode 1 is where
episode
he wakes
1,
up.
so
The very first scene of the first episode. Yeah.
Okay.
And after that point, every Charlotte that is the most present is actually Dolores.
Which I think would explain some of the odd behavior that I think we picked out before, right? Like when she opens that door and just kind of beckons Bernard to walk through it, and then they eventually find the room of Bernard's. It's because she knows exactly what they're going to find because she's Dolores, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I thought that was that's an interesting like Easter egg that we'll have to go back and watch and look for.
So when did Elsie? He says, "You made it." Is that fit into that?
Come again?
Look that Charlotte gives Bernard, and he's like, "Oh, you made it."
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you made it or whatever.
Yeah.
As in, like, I know something that I think you either do or you don't. Yeah.
Or like I know that you're weak, so shit. Yeah. So when did Elsie die? Like, so when does Charlotte, like in the grand scheme, like just thinking like timeline being the episodes, like when did Elsie die?
Like Elsie I think if the entire, sorry, Akash.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if the entire events of this season took place over 2 weeks, with or maybe 2.5 weeks, with the last half week happening when they pick up Bernard, I would assume that it just happens at the tail end of. I mean, it obviously happens at the tail end of what we learn about Bernard. So maybe 1 week in, I think.
Or mid second week, right? I would say. Because possibly, it happens right. I mean, the beat scene to the scene where they take him into the forge, that is a tail end of the show. And then, okay, so from the point where they pick him up to the beach till Charlotte gets on the boat and leaves is the most present tense.
Right.
Right before that is when Bernard sees Ford for the last time, and then creates Charlotte, or sees Elsie gets killed, creates Charlotte, and then goes to the beach, passes out.
So Charlotte actually killed Elsie, not Dolores.
That's
not
right.
Darlet, Charlotte.
Charlotte did kill. Yep.
Charlotte killed her. Okay.
Yeah. I would assume that he was only prompted to do that after she had already killed Elsie.
Yeah, after he saw her kill Elsie.
Yeah. But they do a weird thing with time, which I think was just because they just needed to keep moving on, where almost immediately after they show Charlotte kill Elsie, they show Charlotte cleaning up the body of Elsie.
Right.
And so you would assume that happens immediately, but I guess now that we know the truth, I think we're just supposed to assume that happens a couple days later. As things maybe have cooled down after
days or hours, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying is Bernard sees Elsie die, then has to create a homegirl, Charlotte, again, right? Or create Darlet, and then release her out, and then Charlotte dies. So
that's right.
That would mean he had to create her within the span of a couple hours, or it took a week, and then
I'm thinking
they just didn't clean up the bodies for a week or something.
36 hours or something crazy.
Sure,
maximum.
Okay, it kind of makes you wonder if they can print out host bodies that quickly. What other kind of problems? I'm taking the conversation in a weird direction, but just what other problems is society suffering from if they can print bodies that have flesh and blood and digital consciousness with terabytes or exabytes of memory or something? Whatever. Yeah. A discussion for another time.
Just a note to the beach scene with Bernard and Ford. Again, this episode didn't have the dialogue that I really like. Didn't have the juicy, poetic, awesome dialogue. But again, fucking Ford delivered.
On the edge of the crest of the water or whatever. That was
he's saying he liked this one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I was this was really pretty. It was a beautiful way. And he was breaking, emotionally, he was kind of breaking as he was saying it. As just he's talking to his son. That we'll see each other again. It was a really. Man, Anthony Hopkins, man. If he's one of the reasons this season was so great was they brought him back for season 2.
Definitely would not have been the same without him, and I really hope they find some way to bring him back again. It's not an impossible task that Dolores also somehow sent Ford's consciousness if Ford happened to be in the forge,
or he's embedded in her. He's always with her.
Yeah, maybe
can't get rid of her. So then finally we see Charlotte get on a boat, try to get on a boat, while you hear Dolores speaking to Ford or Arnold, and Stubbs pops in and stops her, and ultimately just has a little bit of back and forth and just kind of lets her go. And then we see Charlotte leaving the park on the boat, and she cracks open her bag, and we see 5 or 6 little pearls. So she's smuggling some people out.
Was that a cheap reveal that he was a host?
Yeah.
That was kind of weird.
That it was the reveal, right?
It was so cheap.
He could not have been more circular about it.
Yeah. Nolan, I read confirmed that the night before they shot that scene, he put that into the script, last minute. So it was a very cheap reveal, in my opinion.
I think they just know what to do with them, and they
didn't have to, though. That's the thing. That wasn't necessary. No one was screaming. It doesn't make the story any better,
They could have revealed that, in a much better way, 3rd season somehow, right?
Yeah.
With a much bigger twist or something.
Well, when I saw that, I ultimately thought about the scene where he's in front of the Ghost Nation, and then remember they suddenly just all disappear. It's when we first get introduced to Emily. We don't know who she is yet, and we see Emily and Stubbs talk at this camp with the Ghost Nation.
Mm-hmm.
They're going, and there's some guy is giving some big speech, and then suddenly like Emily takes off, and they're about to like kill Stubbs, and then some guy whispers to him, and they're all gone. Remember?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something that might be there for them to fall back on. But
Wait, so what do you think that means, Jason?
No, I'm just saying like that. I was curious what the hell was going on, and
I think Jason's getting at that they've left breadcrumbs that
Yeah.
he's a host.
He's a host. So those are two different timelines or something. You know, everyone's having trouble remembering timelines. So maybe those are like two different timelines for stuff. Because it made no sense if he was a human. Like where'd all those people go? Why is he there? Like it just seemed like a very. I just remember looking at it. It felt very odd. Like why that scene and why that character? And then now they're revealing he's a host.
I don't think with this reveal it means he was ever human. I think he's been a host since day one at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. He was like built. He was built for a purpose.
So timeline in that sense doesn't really matter, I don't think, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying like that's like a reasoning or like a breadcrumb that we see. A host. They confuse time. We see those snap scenes all the time.
That's right.
I mean, it really doesn't matter though. That's the thing. Like his character is so insignificant. It's just like he could be human, he could be host. Who really cares? Like, does him one or the other? Is that going to affect the story?
No, but I think that's what makes it worse. Is that like, it's like if he's so insignificant, then why even bother? Like they're just adding twist for twist's sake now, right? They just be like, oh, gotcha. And you're like, no, if you just fucking thought of it, then you didn't get me, right? You didn't make this happen.
Or maybe they just wanted to plant the seed of like, there's no one safe. You know, everyone could be a host. Nobody could be human. This whole thing there couldn't be there may be no single human in this whole story. They've all been hosts the whole time, for all we know.
Yeah, but then I don't know. There's something that's very cheap about that. I don't like that.
Yeah.
This is all part of Charlie's, Bernard Arnold's son's dream when he's in a coma.
Oh God, that's the biggest twist.
Well, what my dad doesn't work.
Yeah.
I like the line that Dolores says when she's asking about Ford and saying like, you know, would you judge me? Or I wonder how you would judge me. Which is funny because we said that exact same thing last podcast. Like, I wonder how Ford would judge Dolores. But she's like, I wonder what you think of me. She goes, but I'd rather live with your judgment than die with your sympathy.
Who did she say that to?
She's saying like monologuing that to Ford or Bernard or somebody during this final scene as we're panning over the beach.
She's never talked to Ford. Only Bernard's the only character that's interacted with Ford this season.
Okay, so
wait, no,
Arnold.
Yeah, no, she's talking to Bernard then. I think.
Yeah, it's Bernard.
When Bernard wakes up in the room. Okay. Yeah. So so does that mean then she cloned another Bernard?
She had to have. She printed another copy in his house.
No, yeah.
Do you think that signifies anything about like that the conversation she had with him at the beginning of the episode about variations? About like, do you think she did something to him to make him different from the Bernards she had created before?
That's a good question. I hope she didn't, because then she mentions like they're so inherently different before she departs. Yeah, it'd be kind of either like a something to distract him with, to just basically get in his own head, and then he ends up. I don't know. That'd be kind of shitty. I don't know. I think that was supposed to be clear, not ambiguous, that she made the truest version of Bernard as she could.
Gotcha.
So, so we see Charlotte, Dolores, and Bernard, which is ostensibly like in the future. Who's
back
in
at Arnold's
Charlotte's
house?
Body?
Who's what?
Who's in Charlotte's body?
Yeah, I think it's also Dolores. So I think she's kind of just cloning herself.
That's sick. That's crazy. And what level of consciousness is that? Okay, so if it's not Charlotte, it's Dolores.
What if it's Teddy?
That'd be crazy.
Teddy in Charlotte's body, like really fuck with him, really put him through like a power thing. Like, I'll put you in a woman's body.
Yeah.
You've been acting like a bitch this whole season. I'll put you in a woman's body. Yeah, I was wondering that too. Like, why her? Like, I would have preferred just them two, Dolores and Bernard. I don't know why like Darlet had to be there.
Well, I mean, Darlet was the one who escaped. So,
Darlet was
why did Dolores have to be there?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Also,
I
why
mean-
was she dressed up? Like, where were they going? Like, is that
the
like
real
where they
world.
part ways?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
she's
they
in the real
just-
world, man. That's what the real how people dress in the future.
So
guess so.
so this breaks down 3 characters. So Dolores, Bernard, and to a lesser degree, I mean, Charlotte. How do you think their arcs ended this season? Are you satisfied?
I mean, they left it exactly where we kind of wanted this season to be,
Right.
where they're going to go wreak havoc in the real world, and maybe do some other shit back at Westworld. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. Like maybe they'll show Charlotte trying to run, like a Darlet trying to run the business in Charlotte's place. So that might be interesting. And then just trying to see what Dolores and Bernard get up to. It's actually, I'm almost kind of intimidated for the writers for what they're going to do, because I feel like the more they make the outside world real, the less mystical and less interesting like Westworld itself gets, as a park.
Yeah, they could just try to take it a step back. Maybe that's why they introduced this new Forge level, so they can take the story back to a more fantastical area and have more freedom with their writing and not constricted by real world restraints.
And then you have Felix and Maeve, right? They're not going anywhere. They're not leaving the island anytime soon.
Yeah.
So we'll probably still get our fair share of Westworld. I just don't want to see fucking Dolores at Starbucks and shit. Like it's.
Yeah.
I think that'll just completely tank it.
Yeah, other than assimilating and becoming a part of humanity, I don't know what her purpose is outside Westworld.
Another good question, right? Is she going to infiltrate some nuclear silo?
Yeah.
Is she going to go, try to raise some army from, some child soldiers in Africa or something? Like, what is her end game
here? Yeah.
This would honestly be a cool ending. Like, just leave it here. Leave it here. No post credit. Leave it here. Like, this is what happened. I don't know. I mean, the cool thing about Ex Machina is we didn't see her get out. Like, well, we saw her get out, but we didn't see her when she was out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to see her get out. I want to see them get out of the park. I don't care once they're out. Once they're out, they're just like a regular human being, and that's boring. So it just,
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Or I don't know how you make it compelling, or I don't know how you get Dolores to operate in a world that she doesn't belong in. Like, how does she maintain this, like, alpha female position in, like, Manhattan, where she doesn't know shit? She never ran a taxi before. What is she going to do? It just seems weird that they're going to put her and all these characters so far out of their element. Are they going to feel like those characters anymore?
I mean, or it could end up becoming one of the typical, like, experimental runaway movies where she's trying to live her life out in God knows where, and then it's a Bourne Ultimatum situation with multiple Delos guys coming to retrieve her, and she's just constantly on the run, and Bernard is trying to pull her back into Westworld, to trap her again. So you could go that route.
Yeah. I wouldn't like that.
I don't think so. I would either. But
you guys ever watch Transcendence?
Not sure. I don't know.
It's a movie with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
He becomes an AI.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wasn't that terrible?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is so close to running the risk of becoming like that. AIs are trying to survive in our world. Like in other more typical AI type movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think all in all, I wanted a little bit more time to sit on it and watch it again, or at least try to watch a few episodes of the season at a time, just to try to put them together, because
get more consistency.
Yeah, because you go week by week, and man, after I finished this episode, I rewatched it today, and I wasn't that excited about rewatching it. And it's just man, it's a finale. It's a finale. I should want to watch it again. Like Game of Thrones, I've watched multiple times during the week before the new episode comes out, because I want to remember everything. I want to be fully in the loop. And I was like that in the last season. I mean, we started all this by like me saying that I watched season 1 4 times. And it's
just so intimidating to follow. It's just it took me literally probably an hour just thinking about each storyline to get the timeline straight in my head.
Yeah.
It's a lot to swallow, so I can understand the hesitation on revisiting something like this so quickly.
So
it feels like homework, It's like I gotta think a lot,
This website says, according to Nielsen, finale ratings were down 24% from the season premiere.
Mm-hmm.
So less people watched the finale than watched the premiere, which I think is normal, but I think 24% drop is quite a bit.
I think I sent you guys like the rating for the whole season was down like 16.
Oh, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see.
By about, I think, like 200,000 followers or something. It wasn't significant, but it is a drop. I think it's like the Lost effect, where it had a ton of people watch like season 2, and when the plot and the mystery box gets bigger and crazier, like people jump off, and it's not something. It becomes more of a cult show, so we might see this going in that direction.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, depending on what season 3 is about, like I'm a big maybe for season 3, or at least I'm not gonna watch it live. Like I'm not gonna follow week by week. You know, I'll wait about halfway through or whatever, and just kind of binge and see if I'm in or out by that point. But like I don't know, man. I mean, I felt confused every single episode, which, you know, and again, like I hate going back to the first season, but in the first season I was a little confused. But I feel like I was confused in the right way. I was asking good questions, and a lot of those questions in some ways got paid off, you know, or at least their answers to my questions were presented in a really interesting way. And this season, like, dude, I'm asking so many questions, and you just knew they weren't going to answer them all. And like, I don't know if I'm not that curious for the answers either, you know, like, man, oh, whoa, so Ford, like, or Man in Black. So like, why did he do what's the whole point behind the Forge? At this point, I don't know if I really care. Like, just you tell me why I don't really care. So that's an answer I'm not really looking to see. You know, I don't know about you guys, but it's just like, oh, if I watch season 3, it's just curious where they're taking the show. I'm not curious about where these characters are going.
Yeah, I'll wait to pass judgment on next season until I see the trailer, because I'm pretty sure it'll get me enticed enough to want to watch it week by week. But yeah, but at the moment, I'm not jonesing for more Westworld. I actually could definitely use a break from even thinking about just how aggravated that show has made me over these last 10 weeks here and there.
Yeah.
So yeah, if it didn't start up again, I don't think I'd be all that sad. But,
I would. Yeah, it's something I'd probably get over, but I don't know. There's some questions that just out of my own curiosity I'd like to see answered.
What are they? Or like what's like the biggest burning question you have still after season 2 you want to see in season 3?
Just what the fuck Dolores is doing out there. Like, what is the main point of her even leaving? Like, that's what they need to answer. And I think the thing that they set up now, as I kind of want to know what's going on with the Man in Black still. Like, yeah, that's the main mystery. That's like the big teaser that they set you up for season 3. And that's probably got me the most excited to learn more about. I want to know the dynamics of the Forge. For me, it's more of like a nerdy, like, technical understanding of what's happening, which is driving my interest in the show. Like, how they conceptually visualize and explain this concept. That's what the show is more about for me, rather than plot line or anything else.
Yeah, and it's sad because I think that's a part of what they want to offer, but that's definitely not it would be a weakness and a detriment to the show if they lived up to that as much as we might want it. But at the same time, they don't stop the not knowing what the facts are about the universe from like writing really confusing narratives and storylines to get you all twisted up so that it's only revealed at the very last moment, you know, before they start asking you new questions about what's possible and how shit works.
That's actually makes me think of something. Like, this show this season definitely tried to like universe build. You know, they wanted to build a universe of Westworld, like this world of Westworld, and the lore behind it and stuff. And I feel like if you're a universe building entity, a show or franchise, whatever it is, movies, you have to keep a lot of it simple. You keep the stories and the characters and the directions very simple, and you kind of allow the richness of the world you build around to bring the audience in and get me excited about stuff. It's just provide the environment and give it that rich environment, and not like muck it up with like a million different questions and stories. Like the Marvel universe is really easy to follow. It's not hard at all to follow. Like, and there's interweaving storylines within the Marvel universe, and it's not hard to figure out. It's very simple. But you love it.
The Marvel universe is based on characters rather than. Are you trying to get a setting, or what are you trying to get at here?
I'm just trying to get at like adding all this complexity in the questions that they're having the audience ask. The fact that they're building the world bigger and bigger, and it feels like there's elements of this world that we don't know or understand, makes it impossible as a viewer to like even try to answer them. Like all the questions I had this season, it was like, who fucking knew? And again, like going back to the prediction you made for Akash about getting Ford's consciousness out. Like, who fucking knew that was the direction that this? Who knew that was a layer to this world?
I guess.
I know you. But did you really know? Did you really know?
I mean, it seemed like I had no idea. It was just a blind, throwing a dart at the wall. But like,
so I'm saying if they add another layer to that in season 3, and they're still asking all these questions with interweaving story, it's a lot.
Answer questions with more questions. It's like that. The mystery box, the fault of the mystery box, because it gets so big. There's no answers in there. So, yeah, I get that.
No, it's like I think I'm trying to piece together an argument in my mind of comparing this to Game of Thrones, because I feel like Game of Thrones. I think even if George R. R. Martin said this in an interview where he kind of has like a yes and attitude to things that happen, where like, yeah, let's just make shit happen, and then just ask, okay, what does this do to the character? Where does this take the character? What happens next with this character? I feel like this definitely this show is way more engineered. We're like way more, like to almost get political, like centrally planned communist, right? Where everything is just very explicitly laid out and exposed in a very particular, explicit manner. Which has the benefit of like being really cohesive, but then also has the consequence of like forcing them into a position where they have to be vague in order to create drama. Whereas I feel like for something like
that goes into the show, right? Because it's like code is so predictable, so it goes into like the whole theme of what they just presented to us.
Well, no, actually, I would say it's almost the opposite, because like. They are like doing the opposite of what Logan figured out, because I feel like George R. R. Martin does what Logan figured out, which is like, no, we have a code where it's just we put characters in realistic situations, we challenge them, and then see where that takes them and how that changes them as a character. Whereas I feel like this show is kind of just like, no, well, this is what we want to happen. Let's try to make the characters do things that make that happen. But this can't happen this early, so we'll just have them say yada 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 nonsense that doesn't really add anything to the story and doesn't really move their character along. But then it's okay; they'll be revealed later and stuff. I feel like that's the kind of general attitude and how you can compare the two shows. On one level, and I think that's part of why like Westworld first season didn't have to rely on that so much, partly because maybe it was just the first season, like everything was so new and fresh that like we would have just eaten up anything. But I think second season compared to this general show of Game of Thrones, I feel like those are kind of two different philosophies behind how they wrote the stories.
That's a really interesting comparison though, because Game of Thrones is really complex and it is a rich world. So they did both, they really intertwined both. But I'm trying to think, like, first off, second seasons are always really tough. Chapter 2s are always hard. The second movie of a franchise is always tough. I'm trying to remember season 2 of Game of Thrones.
Added benefit of being a proven product. That's a rich world that's been developed, that's been eaten up by consumers. So it's like,
but even in the books, I mean, the books exist, and
that's exactly.
There's
a set. Yeah, it's a rich history. It's a rich characters. Everything's built in, and they have a huge audience base.
I see what you're saying. It's easier for the showrunners, because they
much easier.
More to draw from,
right?
And have to exclude, as opposed to these guys who create everything from scratch. You're right. It
doesn't take away from the criticism of Westworld. I mean,
and pure fantasy is a lot easier. You forgive a lot more things. Like you're a lot more willing to bend some rules here and there with pure fantasy. I feel like sci-fi, you really look for how the dots really connect, because that's you have to know.
No, but even that point came to mind when I was making this argument, and my counterpoint to that is just like, even then, Game of Thrones is still fairly grounded, right?
Exactly.
Like, obviously, they're very mystical elements, right? But they are still very strict and very cautious about when they introduce any of these types of new elements, and it's never done for the sake of like just like doing it to introduce tech or something like that. It's just like, okay, well, maybe let's push the boundary of what's possible in one direction, but not highlight how we push the boundary. Instead, let's just see, how do people react to it? What do people do with it?
It's like we're getting a glimpse of the story that's already so grounded, where once in a blue moon, like in 1,000 years, something crazy happens and we're able to witness it. And that's what Game of Thrones feels like.
Yeah. I mean, like, take The Mountain, for instance, right? All of us would want to know, like, oh, okay, what connection is there between Qyburn's science and the magic that we've been exposed to? Sure. Yet, at no point after we are first introduced to the Mountain does that ever become the most important thing to talk about the Mountain, right? It's like, how did he massacre, this one guy for pissing on his boot? Like how did he rip some guy's head off, that threatened Cersei, right? Like, none of that ever matters, because they are just upfront with, like, hey, we're going to tell you that this thing is possible, and then let's just see what happens. What do people, do with it? Whereas I feel like this show, it's to its credit, it's like way more intentional about certain things, but I think it's painted them into this corner with this season that made it hard to live up to that, like the skills that they showed off first season. No, but I also think you're right, Jason. Like, second chapters, second seasons, sequels to movies are probably like really difficult because of the expectations that gets built up when someone wanted you to make a sequel in the first place, right?
Yeah, it's like, how do you stay? I mean, look at this season 2. I mean, how do you stay true to the story? How do you? They kind of left Westworld. Like, we were in Westworld, but they left Westworld. It's like, how do you take us out of the setting that you had every single episode from last season? How you take us out of that and keep it feeling like the same show? Which is, if they go into the real world, that's what I was, the point I was making earlier is like, how are you going to make it feel like this is Westworld? How's it going to feel like Dolores if she's like, checking her email? That's going to be weird, So yeah, it is that delicate balance.
I mean, in this show, I think was presented Westworld as a prison that people, that the hosts want to break out of, in a sense, right? It's always, it always felt like it's gonna leave the park. It's not like they tricked us or anything like that. Even season 1 ends with Maeve wanting to leave the park, and she ends up turning around last minute, which kind of allowed us to stay within the park. But I think the show's intention is always, the setting is in Westworld, but the bigger picture is outside of Westworld.
Yeah, I just wish that, like, if these 4 seasons that they have, it would have been cool to see the awakening of hosts in, like, just 4 different places. Like, that, I would have almost preferred that to just this really convoluted, if we're going to have 4 seasons. I can't imagine this, like...
I don't understand how that's compelling, though. We're just seeing 4 different storylines at the same thing, of the story ending at the same spot. Yeah.
Or you sprinkle in like an intertwining storyline between the 4 different parks, so that way in that final 4th season, when we see the hosts come alive, there's more weight to it. We saw the journey of all the hosts.
Season 4 will be the Infinity War of
Westworld. Yeah.
The series finale would be the season finale of episode 2, essentially, is what you're getting at, and it would end with a handful of them just escaping to the real world, and the show just ends.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I also did like how throughout this episode, people were like almost breaking the 4th wall, being like, "Oh, of course you'd be here, Bernard," right? Or like, Dolores coming across the Man in Black, and she's like, "Oh, of course,
Yeah.
I would see you here."
Yeah, didn't I see at Craft Services earlier?
I know you. You were in the parking lot earlier.
So any final thoughts, guys?
No.
Yeah, I think we covered it all.
Yeah.
We'll see in 2 years, when it comes back on, whenever.
Yeah.
We've got 2 years to stew on it. I'll most likely forget about it in like a week.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, guys? Let's sign off.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. As always, you can find us at nocamspodcast.podbean.com and on Twitter at nocamspodcast. I'm Akash, and I'm on Twitter at akash0902.
I'm at Sunny_Gunna.
And I'm exclusively here on No Camps Podcast.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a What We've Been Watching. I think we got a couple of things to catch up on.
Yeah. Looking forward to changing it up. Yeah.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Peace.
Bye.